Carl Jung uncovered a truth about the human psyche that most people will never grasp, and it could very well protect you from deep emotional harm. He found that when a narcissist loses control over someone, they don't simply retreat. What comes next is far more calculated and far more dangerous. But before we get to the final move narcissists make, the one Jung indirectly warned about, we need to understand a critical insight into how their mind works. Jung explained that each of us carries what he called the shadow, the hidden, often disowned parts of our personality that we push out of awareness. For narcissists, however, this shadow becomes something far more volatile. What Jung revealed about the narcissist's relationship to their shadow completely reshapes how we understand manipulation. And here's the chilling part. Most people don't realize they're dealing with a narcissist until the damage is already done. Jung observed that narcissists don't face their own darkness. Instead, they project it onto others. They see in you the very traits they refuse to acknowledge in themselves. But when they meet someone who sees past their charm, someone they can't manipulate, something profound shifts in their inner world. This, Jung said, is when the real psychological battle begins. Here's where things get disturbing. Jung wrote that every person wears what he called the persona, the public mask we show the world. For most, it's a tool of social adaptation. But for narcissists, the persona isn't just a mask. It is their identity. And when that mask begins to crack, when someone sees behind it, the narcissist doesn't just feel exposed, they feel attacked. Jung found that narcissists carry what he called an inflated ego, a bloated sense of superiority built to hide deep, buried feelings of worthlessness and shame. But here's the insight that can save your mental freedom. When you threaten this fragile ego, when they realize they can't control you, it triggers a full-blown psychological crisis. Jung described this as the collapse of their inner defense system, unleashing their most primitive survival instincts. He discovered that narcissists follow a three-stage pattern when confronted by someone they can't dominate. The first is what he termed the testing phase. In this phase, the narcissist pokes at your psychological defenses, searching for vulnerabilities. They're looking for what Jung called emotional pressure points, the cracks they can exploit. But here's the part that will chill you. If you withstand their probing, if you show them you can't be controlled, you've just become their worst nightmare. According to Jung, this is no longer a game. At this point, the narcissist begins what he referred to as psychological reconnaissance. They study your reactions, analyze your emotional habits, and try to map your defenses. And what they do next, well, that's when the real danger begins. Stage 2, the escalation phase. Carl Jung observed that when a narcissist's usual tactics begin to fail, they shift into a dangerous mode of compensatory behavior. In other words, they start overcompensating for their loss of control by intensifying their manipulation. This is where things escalate. According to Jung, this marks the beginning of what he described as psychological warfare, where tactics like gaslighting, projection, and emotional blackmail become more aggressive and calculated. But here's the disturbing truth Jung uncovered. This phase isn't random. It's a psychological test. The narcissist wants to see if you'll crumble under the pressure. And if you don't, Jung noted that this is when they recruit others, what he termed flying monkeys. These are individuals who, often unknowingly, support the narcissist's agenda. It's a refined, multi-layered manipulation campaign that Jung found particularly dangerous. Because what comes next can break even the strongest minds. Stage 3, the recognition phase. This is where Jung's most powerful insight emerges, when a narcissist finally realizes you are fully immune to their manipulation. They enter what Jung called narcissistic mortification. a deep psychological injury that threatens their entire self-image. At this point, they often resort to their most destructive tactic, psychological inversion. Unable to manipulate you directly, the narcissist flips the narrative. They now try to make you question your sanity, your reality, your very perception. According to Jung, this tactic is particularly dangerous because the narcissist now positions themselves as the victim and you as the aggressor. It's what Jung referred to as shadow projection on steroids. And it works because it taps into something deeper. Jung warned that this tactic exploits the collective unconscious, the shared psychological blueprint within all humans. Narcissists instinctively manipulate this by drawing on society's tendency to defend those who appear victimized. But Jung went even further. He didn't call it just manipulation. He described it as psychological terrorism, designed to sever you from your support system. The narcissist launches a smear campaign, their final move to control the story when they can no longer control you. Jung observed that narcissists are eerily skilled at reading group psychology. They understand archetypes, universal roles embedded in the human psyche. So they paint themselves as the archetypal wounded soul, while casting you as the villain. And here's what most people never realize until it's too late. Jung found that narcissists often begin this campaign subtly. They present themselves as concerned about your behavior, even hurt by it. But this is no genuine vulnerability. It's bait, a calculated move to gather allies for their psychological attack. Narcissists target empathetic, caring individuals, those most likely to believe their performance and come to their aid. According to Jung, the final goal of this tactic is isolation. Narcissists understand that human beings are wired for connection, and they weaponize that need. Jung's most chilling discovery? They work patiently and methodically, poisoning your relationships one at a time, cutting you off from your emotional lifelines until you're completely alone. They begin by planting subtle doubts about you in the minds of your friends, family, and coworkers. Carl Jung uncovered a manipulative psychological method behind this, something he referred to as truth sandwiching. It's when narcissists bury their lies between factual statements, making their entire story feel authentic and believable. Jung noted that this strategy takes advantage of how the human mind works. We tend to trust information when it's packaged with known truths. And because of that, our conscious mind struggles to tell the truth apart from the deception. When a narcissist loses control over you, Jung observed, they start projecting their darkest traits onto you with extraordinary intensity. According to Jung's analysis, this projection serves a dual purpose. It lets the narcissist reject their own flaws while simultaneously attacking your integrity. And here's the part that ties it all together. Jung said narcissists unconsciously assign their own motives, behaviors, and patterns onto you. If they're controlling, they'll accuse you of being the manipulator. If they're emotionally cruel, they'll insist you're the one hurting them. And why is this tactic so psychologically effective? Jung explained, it's because it feeds off a mechanism he described as confirmation bias amplification. When people hear claims mixed with psychological truths, especially truths that sound familiar or plausible, their brains begin searching for evidence to support them, even if those claims don't actually apply to you. Narcissists rely on this to distort the truth in their favor. But Jung went even further. He revealed that the narcissist's final and most dangerous move involves a total reversal of reality. They reconstruct the entire story of your relationship and cast themselves as the innocent victim. What makes this so disturbingly powerful, Jung said, is that narcissists instinctively understand something he called psychological timing. They know exactly when to flip the narrative for maximum impact, specifically when you're at your most emotionally vulnerable. Jung's research showed that this tactic is often unleashed during major stress, grief, illness, heartbreak, or life transitions, when your defenses are down. In those fragile moments, the narcissist intensifies their manipulation, and their lies seem far more convincing. It's during these windows of weakness, Jung explained, that they launch psychological warfare, gaslighting at its most extreme. And what he discovered about this advanced form of gaslighting may help explain every moment that left you feeling confused or doubting yourself. Jung described how narcissists don't just challenge your memory. They go after your very ability to think clearly. They suggest you're irrational, unstable, or mentally unwell. But here's the deeper purpose, according to Jung. Their goal isn't merely to shake your confidence in specific moments. It's to dismantle your entire sense of reality. Jung called this process psychological reality erosion. He saw that narcissists systematically undermine your trust in your memory, your judgment, and your perceptions. The aim is to make you so unsure of your own mind that you stop believing in yourself completely. And Jung also discovered something chilling. They know how to leverage what we now call social proof. Narcissists don't just isolate you internally. They manipulate how others perceive you, creating a false consensus that deepens your self-doubt. People often look to those around them for signals on how to think and act, something Carl Jung identified as a natural human tendency. Jung's analysis revealed that when narcissists can't manipulate you directly, they turn their attention to influencing the people in your life, creating false social proof to back up their distorted narrative. But here's the jaw-dropping part Jung uncovered. Narcissists deliberately target those who are naturally empathetic, individuals who want to see the good in others. They exploit this compassion and weaponize it against you. Jung called this the exploitation of helper psychology. His research showed that people inclined to help often overlook manipulation because their empathy overshadows critical thinking. Narcissists instinctively recognize these helper personalities and portray themselves as vulnerable, needing support and understanding. Jung described their final manipulation move as systematic character destruction, a campaign far beyond simple gossip or petty complaints. This tactic is why their attacks feel so deeply wounding. Narcissists don't just criticize your actions, they assault your core character traits and intentions. They twist your positive qualities into negative traits. Jung observed how narcissists cleverly reframe your strengths as flaws. If you're independent, you're labeled selfish. Confident becomes arrogant. Setting boundaries turns into controlling behavior. What makes this reframing so effective, Jung explained, is that every strength carries a grain of truth as a potential weakness when taken to extremes. Carl Jung also identified their use of emotional terrorism, the deliberate infliction of psychological pain aimed at breaking your spirit. This isn't random cruelty, but carefully calculated psychological warfare designed to force your submission. Jung found that narcissists pinpoint your deepest insecurities and vulnerabilities, weaponizing the intimate knowledge gathered during your relationship. The ultimate aim, Jung explained, is not just to hurt you, but to crush your psychological resistance so fully that you'll accept their distorted reality just to end the pain. Narcissists understand human breaking points and systematically apply pressure until they find yours. Several psychological principles Jung uncovered explain why this manipulation is devastatingly effective. He described cognitive overload, where the brain shuts down when bombarded with conflicting information. And here's what makes this tactic especially insidious. When you face false accusations, social isolation, gaslighting, and emotional terrorism all at once, your brain simply cannot process the attacks effectively. Jung observed why even smart, strong people fall prey to this manipulation. Intelligence and strength don't guard against cognitive overload. In fact, highly intelligent individuals often struggle more because they attempt to logically dissect behavior that defies logic. Narcissistic manipulation operates beneath rational thought, targeting what Jung called primitive psychological responses. Finally, Jung noted that during their last phase of manipulation, narcissists intensify what modern psychology terms trauma bonding, the powerful, confusing emotional attachment that forms between abuser and victim. According to Jung's observations, this escalation serves a very specific purpose. It increases the chances that you'll return to the narcissist in an effort to end the psychological torment. What Jung uncovered about trauma bonding sheds light on every confusing feeling you've experienced. He found that the cycle of intense psychological pain, followed by brief moments of relief, creates a powerful addiction-like effect on the brain. But Jung said something crucial about this bond that explains why breaking free is so difficult. His research showed that trauma bonding hijacks the nervous system's natural responses to threat and safety. Your brain becomes conditioned to perceive the narcissist as both the source of harm and the provider of comfort. This dynamic fosters a psychological dependence that can endure, even when you intellectually know the relationship is damaging. Carl Jung also revealed that narcissists manufacture what he termed false urgency as part of their final manipulation tactics. They create crises that demand immediate attention, preventing you from thinking clearly. What Jung observed about this manufactured urgency will change everything. Narcissists deliberately generate chaos and confusion to keep you reactive rather than strategic. This chaos has a deeper purpose. Jung explained that when you're constantly firefighting these fake emergencies, you lose the mental space needed to spot manipulation patterns or plan effective defenses. He called this being trapped in survival mode, where your focus narrows on immediate threats instead of long-term solutions. Jung identified key signs that indicate when a narcissist is escalating their final manipulation. The first is a sudden spike in the frequency and severity of their attacks, a phase he labeled manipulation acceleration. But there are other warning signs many miss. Jung found that narcissists increasingly pull third parties into their tactics, turning your relationships into battlefields for their psychological warfare. He noted that in this phase, narcissists become desperate and erratic. They may threaten, issue ultimatums, or act irrationally. Jung called this behavior control panic, the terror of losing their grip on you. To defend against these tactics, Jung recommended cultivating psychological detachment, the skill to observe manipulation without emotional involvement. His most powerful defense, however, is developing the observer self, the aspect of consciousness that can witness your own thoughts and feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Jung emphasized that when you can view a narcissist's tactics as psychological phenomena instead of personal attacks, their power to disturb your emotions weakens. This detachment isn't about becoming cold. It's about building the inner strength to remain centered amid psychological assault. Jung also stressed the importance of reality anchoring, such as keeping detailed records of events and interactions. This documentation is crucial because narcissists often distort or deny facts to manipulate your sense of reality. He uncovered that sustained psychological manipulation can impair your memory formation and recall, a phenomenon he called manufactured amnesia. Constantly having your memories and perceptions questioned causes your brain to doubt its own records. For recovery, Jung advocated shadow integration, accepting the dark experiences you endured without letting them define you. His therapeutic approach focuses on reclaiming your authentic self, the person you were before the manipulation began. Jung's most hopeful insight is that surviving narcissistic manipulation can trigger psychological individuation, a profound self-understanding and recognition of your psychological patterns. He observed that those who overcome these experiences often develop stronger intuition, firmer boundaries, and a heightened ability to spot manipulation in others. This enhanced awareness becomes a shield against future harm, and often leads to a more genuine, fulfilling life. Ultimately, Jung concluded that the narcissist's power depends entirely on your psychological participation in their distorted reality. Once you stop engaging in their games, their manipulation loses its grip. His most liberating discovery is that narcissists are far more fragile psychologically than they appear. Their elaborate tactics are desperate efforts to uphold their inflated ego. Jung described narcissists as frightened children trapped in adult bodies, terrified of their own inner emptiness. Understanding this truth is key to your psychological freedom. When you recognize narcissistic manipulation for what it truly is, the desperate acts of a wounded soul, it no longer controls your emotions or your life. Jung's work reminds us that the power to reclaim your psychological sovereignty has always been within you. The narcissist's final manipulation is their last desperate attempt to stop you from finding your own strength. But now you know the truth. And according to Carl Jung, the truth is the ultimate weapon against manipulation. Remember Jung's discovery. When a narcissist sees you as too dangerous to manipulate, it means you've already won. Their last dirty trick proves your psychological victory, not defeat. You are stronger than their manipulation, wiser than their deception, and free to reclaim the authentic life Jung believed was your birthright. Thank you for staying with me on this journey. If you found value in today's discussion, please subscribe and share this video with someone who might benefit.